we have a class of 100, Prachi. Welcome to XIC in our virtual space. And Prachi has been a part of the agency called FoxyMoron. I'm sure all of you would have heard. It's a part of the creative digital agency under Zoom Media Network. And she's the national head and client partnership for FoxyMoron. And she's been doing amazing stuff all this while. And she's here, guys, to take you through the journey that any person, any professional goes through when you are in an agency. This is kind of your stepping stone. We have had like a couple of professionals coming and teaching you. So Prachi, the way we go about the course in XIC is that we have working professionals only coming and teaching here. The faculty who teach at XIC are not exactly completely from only the education industry. They are also parallelly working outside in agencies and corporates. So they do get an understanding of how the professional world works. But yes, the way you are planning to run through, I'm sure it's going to be an amazing journey. So welcome to the virtual class, Prachi. And guys, please say hi. Prachi is here to take you through today's session.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello,
Hi.
ma'am.
Hello, Prachi.
Hi, ma'am.
Hello.
Welcome, ma'am. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This would have been way cooler had it been in person.
Yes.
But yes,
definitely.
I miss the days of just like, being in a room and speaking to everyone. Although fortunately, so I work out of our Gurgaon office a lot, and our Gurgaon office has been operating. So I'm sitting in office for a couple of months now, and we're pretty much walking into office every day. I think Bombay is still a little tied up in, a lot of the government things and rules and regulations, but I think our Gurgaon and Bangalore offices have fully opened up. So hopefully Bombay follows soon. I'm also really hoping that the Bombay office opens up really quickly. But good to be with all of you guys, and I feel like I hope I can shed some light in terms of how agencies work. I don't have too much gyan. I'm not generally a gyani sort of person. I will tell you all a little bit about myself and a little bit about Foxy and the zoo ecosystem, and hopefully walk you all through some ways that agencies are structured, what are the kind of functions that we do, and answer questions. I'm honestly, whenever I do these kind of sessions and whenever I have these kind of conversations, I say this to my CopCom team as well, the more questions, the better, right? Because that's kind of what, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a professor. I have been at some point in time for very little phases doing kind of guest lectures and stuff. But since this is broadly about advertising, and agency life and culture and structures, I'd be more than happy to answer as many questions as possible. And keeping it short, everybody can enjoy their Thursday evening. Do you guys have another class after this, or you're done for the day? I'm the last thing of the day. I'm the last one of the day.
The last one of the day, ma'am.
Great. So you'll be happier if I get done sooner. That's awesome. Okay, so perfect. I'll tell you guys about me to begin with. I don't have slides and stuff for myself. I have slides for everything else. I have been working as working as a professional for the last 10 years, I would say. I am from Bombay. I went to Bombay Scottish, and then I went to HR. I did my BMS in HR college. And then I got a scholarship to go to the University of Westminster to do my master's. I did my master's in marketing communications. I had done my BMS also with a specialization in marketing. So I've always been very sure about what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. After doing my master's in London, I came back to India and I started my own e-commerce startup back in the day. I mean, now the definition of e-commerce startup is big money. At that time, it was an extension of your father's business, and that's all that it meant. And that's pretty much what I did. I built my own website with some random coder in Andheri and some random graphics guy who maybe knew what he was doing, maybe he didn't. I found their numbers on Just Dial. Guys, this is 2010, yeah, so very, very long ago. So yeah, that's how I built my website. My friend was doing his photo shoots and he was helping me. So my father's business was wedding invitations, wedding cards, and I built an e-commerce website to enable NRIs to purchase wedding cards from India and get them delivered to their doorstep. Did that for a couple of years, got really bored. Was of the mindset, since, as I said, I always knew I wanted to do marketing, but I was also pretty sure that once I got into a professional job, it would be very hard to experiment or very hard to like explore doing a business. At least that's the kind of person I am. So did that for a bit, and simultaneously while doing the business, I was also heading an NGO. So when I was in HR as a part of BMS, in my final year, my professor, myself, and another student, we had started a project called Project Chirag, which gives solar lights to villages in India that don't have access to electricity. In the 1 year that I was gone, the project had basically exited college and become like a full-blown NGO. And along with doing my e-commerce startup, I was also heading the NGO because I had a lot of time. And yeah, no looking back since then. I pretty much wrapped all of that up in 2 years, and then I joined Foxy. I've been at Foxy for the last 8 years. So it's been a while, more than 8 years. I finished 8 years in June. Foxy has been existing for 13 years. So I've been here for 8 out of them. So that's pretty epic. Not often, I would say, I would call myself a rare specimen when it comes to marketing and advertising in general, to have loyalties towards an organization. But I always believe very strongly in the power of loyalty and the fact that it pays off in your career. If you're in the right place, of course, and if your heart is there and if you want to do, and you're aligned with the vision of the organization, I think that's what's key. And yeah, in terms of my career path, I started off as being account management, and I'll explain a little bit more about that role and what that does a little bit later in the presentation. So I started off as an account manager. I got promoted to an account director, first 3 years in Bombay. Then I moved to Gurgaon to head the business for the North. And over here, I spent 3.5 years heading the business. So basically complete operational and P&L responsibilities. And sometime last year, sometime in 2020, I got promoted to the national head of client partnerships, which means across all 3 offices that we have, I head agency relations with clients. So I work with all our key clients to not just enable the power of the network that I'm a part of, but also make sure that everything on their brands is happening in the best possible way. And anything that they may want from a larger point of view from the agency or the network is something that I enable and I help them with. So on that note, I will present my screen. But yeah, feel free to ask questions whenever. Like no hang-ups. It's cool. The cliche line of please let me know when my screen is visible. Yeah.
It's visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fantastic. And please call me Prachi. How old do I look to you? Yeah, guys, I was there just 10 years ago, not very long ago. Chill. Okay, perfect. All right, so Zoo Media. Zoo Media is our holding company, or Zoo Media is the name of the network that I'm a part of. So we are India's first independent homegrown media network, and we consist of 7 agencies. We, of course, in this mix of agencies, the different verticals and the different services that we provide, it is something that we're very proud that we've always had this vision of being future facing. Typically, when you look at larger networks of advertising agencies, they're divided by, not by specialization, but they're divided by scale or by volume. When we set out to make the zoo and build the zoo, we were very sure that we wanted to be divided by function rather than by scale. And that's kind of where the initiation point and the inception point of the Zoo Media Network was. And today we have 7 agency brands, FoxyMoron being the one that I represent and is the closest to my heart. So Foxy is the oldest agency amongst these. As I said, it's been more than 13 years now that it's been alive and kicking. Foxy is what we call a full service digital agency, wherein we provide all kinds of services that you may want or you may avail of as a brand within the digital ecosphere. And that ranges from like everything and anything to do with branding, social media marketing, to SEO, search engine optimization, to search engine marketing, paid media promotions, and also, of course, online reputation management, online response management, data analytics, and the works. So effectively, everything and anything that a brand can want from a retainership, or rather from a digital ad agency, is what FoxyMoron provides. And so therefore it becomes the client-facing, the core client-facing agency for the network. Next, we have Doinoink Consulting, DOC as we call it. So Doinoink is our consulting arm, where we specialize in digital transformation. What that means, again, is that we work with, for example, a lot of startups and a lot of family-owned businesses to help get them onto digital, because that's a struggle. So with startups, many times they're going from like Series A to round 1 to round 2 of funding, and they need to scale at a certain pace, at a certain way, or they need to fine-tune their product in a certain way, or they need to go to market in a certain way. So we would help startups with something in any of those realms, in any of those natures. We work with family-owned businesses. A lot of Indian businesses today, they have traditionally been really big in the market, but they don't necessarily endorse digital in the best possible way. And so what DOC helps them do, therefore, is come on to digital, not just as a brand or a product, but as an entire entity, and represent itself in the truest and the most appropriate digital format. Then we have Polin. Polin is our influencer marketing agency. And we do influencer management in the typical way that we see, paid ads and such. We also do talent representation. So we represent Sunil Gavaskar, for example, on digital. And we do creator consulting. So we work with different kinds of content creators and advise them and consult with them on how they should, what is the kind of approach they should be taking towards their content, backed by, of course, data and tools and tracking and things like that. We have next the Rabbit Hole. The Rabbit Hole is our production house, and it does end-to-end production. So everything from small animated kind of videos to big TVCs, DVCs, etc. So today, everything and anything that you see, let's say on Netflix and their YouTube channel, like I don't know how many of you would have seen anything from Behansplaining, or if you would have seen anything on like AK versus AK, pretty much, if you've seen the new Pepper Fry ad or the new Bumble ad. So we've done a lot of those, most of those actually. So the Rabbit Hole is an end-to-end production house, and that's what a production house does, is it creates video content. So it's a video solutions agency. Then we have Mammoth Studios. So Mammoth Studios has a dual objective or a role to play within the network. One is that it works mainly with IPs, intellectual properties, wherein we work curating different scripts with different content writers across the country and abroad as well. And we curate and create these scripts and work with different OTT platforms to conceptualize or materialize them into shows, as you would have it. So long format content is typically what it's called. So IPs or long format content is one half of what Mammoth does. The second half of what Mammoth does is we are becoming a media house by ourselves. So instead of just being media advertisers, we're becoming media owners as well. And what that looks like is essentially having your own network of publishing agents, publishing websites. So one of our first websites is called Man's Life. It was launched a little earlier in this year, and it creates content and is built on the model of content, community, and commerce. So put out beautiful content that attracts and builds a community, which then endorses certain brands and builds the commerce for it. So in a nutshell, that's what Mammoth does. Then we have Noesis Tech, which is a tech agency which has been around for more than a decade. We acquired them a couple of years ago to strengthen our tech services at the zoo. And that is what it does. Again, as a tech company, it does everything from building landing pages and simpler microsites to building mobile apps, web apps, even to complicated and proprietary solutions, such as building like an inventory management system, for example, for a manufacturing plant. So it could go into any realm of technology as long as it's related to the to tech and a tech product that we can build. And lastly, we have Phosphine. So Phosphine is our consumer tech facing company. What I mean by consumer tech is lighter engagement driven technologies such as chatbots, filters, augmented reality, virtual reality, interactive games, interactive apps, anything that is directly in the hands of the consumer and they can engage with is what is housed under Phosphine. So these are the 7 agencies which are a part of the Zoo Media network. And I will very quickly do the regular drill of what we need to what we talk about generally. Sorry. Yeah. So we have 3 offices, as I said. We're based out of Bombay, out of Gurgaon, and out of Bangalore. They're really fun places. I'm sitting right now in the middle one. I don't know.
घर पे नहीं है गाड़ी कोई भी.
Hi, Vidhi. You must be having a lot of fun, right, when this happens, I'm sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. So yeah, very chilled out offices. That's kind of what the vibe of Foxy has always been, and therefore has graduated into the vibe of the zoo as well. What we love to do and what I personally always like to talk to students or aspiring marketers a little bit about is this is, I think, the only Gyan section of my presentation, which is what is the zoo's vision, mission, and values? Because I truly believe that it's important, of course, if you ever do want to join us, that you are looking at what is this for the future, or where is this company headed. I'm pretty sure placements is something that I don't think it's around the corner. I think it's always on. At least when you're on my side of the table, we're always hiring. But I think it's very important to understand where the company is heading that you're planning to join or that you're aspiring to be in. And also on the flip side, it may not just be about the company that you're trying to join, but it can also be about the vision for marketing in general, right? It gives you that kind of sense, I would say, of where the industry is also headed. So yeah, I'll talk about our vision, mission, and values. Very simply put, our vision is to build a network, which is the Zoo Media network, which is the preferred partner to leading businesses that maximizes potential by providing the most impactful solutions through future-ready products and services. Now, seems jargony, sure. I'm not going to break it down into too much detail, but in effect, what we're trying to say is that as a network, we should be able to provide all the services and products that a client can want when it comes to anything to do with digital marketing. And also, we don't just want to be like an execution kind of agency, which is why we stress on the fact that we want to provide the most impactful solutions and through future-ready products and services. So we truly at the Zoo, we believe that our brands should be ahead of the curve. And we take pride in the fact that they are, and we work really hard to make sure that they are. They need to be the first ones to win innovation awards. They need to be the first ones to try out new technology. They need to be the first ones who are, experimenting with different kinds of content or having a different tone of voice. Or, even now, for example, a lot of our brands, like a Burger King, for example, we just hacked the IPL. That's literally the buzz right now. I don't know if any of you follow trade media publications at all, but if you do, take a look at Burger King on brand equity or AFAX or anything like that. We've created a filter which is helping us hack the IPL. For those of you who follow advertising very closely, IPL is one of the most expensive inventories that you can have. And brands pay through their teeth to, get spots or to pay for ads on the IPL and any property around it. What we actually went and did is, in order to hack the IPL, we created a filter which you can interact with after downloading the Burger King app. And it pretty much just allows you to, every time there's a 4 or every time there's a 6, it gives you certain rewards if you're watching real time. So you have to watch real time on the screen. And every time you do that, it unlocks some offers or some engagement or some interaction. So basically, without being a sponsor, what the brand is being able to do right now is keep the audiences engaged with their brand instead of the brands who are advertising on the screen. So which is what we're here for, which is what we live for, right? To use, therefore, technology or cool things or copy in whichever way to either have fun as brands or, trouble our competitors, I guess, when it comes to our brands competition. Our mission, very simply, is we exist to foster a culture of expertise that weaves consulting, content, media, technology, which creates holistic solutions through collaboration and data-backed processes for organizations that demonstrate ambition and thought leadership. So I think why a mission is important, and while we were writing these and collaborating on these as well, it was like, who reads these, right? And yeah, who reads these? These get used infrequently, but at the same time, it kind of sets a tone in your head of what the company is here for and what the people are to work towards. So for us, it's very important that we look at again holistic solutions. As you can see, we're very solutioning performance is something that we're very stringent about, and we really take pride in delivering those. Everything that's data backed, and more importantly, that we want to work with clients who are also demonstrating ambition and thought leadership. We don't just want to work with any and every client. We don't just want to work with clients who may not have the right kind of teams or the right kind of drives or the right kind of products. We want to work with those who are either leading the industry or leading thoughts in that industry, in whichever industry that they belong to. And finally, to take you through our values. Again, I like to do this piece because I really think that people get into advertising with an entire image or perception of it being very glitzy and glamorous and those kind of things, or just the fun place to be. And I think being in the industry for so long, and having worked on across, I think, some at least 200 clients by now, it's a very serious business. We take ourselves very seriously. We get paid serious money, and we also have to deliver on very serious KPIs. And I think what is important, therefore, when we look at our values of Ice Cube, as we have abbreviated it, is that these are some things that you should take with you regardless, whichever department, agency, whichever industry you choose to work in. I think these are values which should be core to every marketing professional for sure. It's something that you hold yourself true to. So yeah, first one is integrity, wherein we respect and expect our stakeholders to demonstrate everything, which is at the highest level of ethics. And this is something which is all encompassing and non-negotiable. Again, as students, guys, there are very dark sides to advertising sometimes, not just in terms of the content, but a lot of times what happens behind the scenes as well. And I think it's always up to each one of us individually to hold ourselves and our organization accountable to the highest level of ethics. And I'm proud to belong to such an organization which does. And I would always encourage each one of us to not compromise on that. I don't think integrity is something that you should ever compromise on in your career. It is something which helps you sleep at night very peacefully. And that's, I think, very important. Creation. Of course, one of our core values is to create. We want to bring thoughts and words into action. That is very important to us because that's what we're here to do. Endurance. It's about getting up, showing up for yourself, for your team, for your organization. And it's not about falling, nor is it about working late hours. This is, I think, during the pandemic, the advertising industry has gotten such a bad name about like long hours and people will randomly tweet something out or put something up on LinkedIn that, oh, I was expected to finish this in like no time. I've been working weekends and this and that and the other. Honestly, when we say endurance, as we kind of put this, we came up with this, I think, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, 2018, long before the pandemic, basically. And we were always very clear and have been, and always try to keep reminding our teams that it's really not, endurance is not about long hours or who's working the latest or who's working how many weekends. It's pretty much about enduring that no matter how much feedback you're getting, you're still there to give your best possible output. Endurance is that, if one member of your team is failing or is not going through, it's about actually working with them and helping them as well. It's about, not giving up on yourself or the company or your brand or your team. And so you kind of keep going and you keep showing up. And this is something which is very fundamental that you need to understand about advertising. There is a lot of rejection. I was saying this the other day to somebody. For a regular creative person, he or she may pitch probably about 60 different ideas every quarter, and maybe 5 of them will see the light of day, right? That's not because they're necessarily they're bad at their job. That's just generally the nature of the business. Like, you have to keep going and you have to keep churning, and you are always looking for those career changing and those award winning ideas, and they will come and they will happen. But nothing happens without hard work, and that's something that, it's not easy. You don't just land up becoming a brilliant copywriter or becoming a fantastic media planner. You have to work towards it. And so endurance is important for you to remember when it comes to advertising. Striving for excellence, you have to continue to raise the bar. No matter what happens, if you reach one level, you want to go the next. You reach a particular level, go to the next. Never get into the comfort zone in advertising, because if you do, then you will stagnate, and then there's no fun, because that's not what we're here for. And empathy is important, because we do work in a high pressure environment. We do work in an environment where a lot of things are live and, in a snapshot, in like literally you think of something in the morning, in the night it's live. So given the pressure and the nature of the work that we do, always remember to step back, think for a second. Am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? Is somebody going through something that I don't understand, before you kind of comment or drive them into a corner? And I cannot express how important this value is. It is something which has led to, I believe, contributed a lot to my success, because it helps you take not just your own point of view, not just your customers or your consumers' point of view, but also your team members, the family that you work with, the people that you're with, everybody. So empathy, I think, is really, really important as a value. And again, regardless what walk of life you're in, this is important to remember. And that completes the Gyan bit of my presentation. Moving into, of course, over the course of the last 13 years, we've worked with pretty much every client that you can imagine. And we've been very, very fortunate. I always, when I talk to some of the old foxes, I'm like, dude, there was a time when we would have one brand that our parents knew, and the remaining brands you're working on, nobody's ever heard of, right? Like, I have sold Pico cupcakes. I don't know if any of you guys know Pico, or used to be. It shut down many years ago. It was a place in Lower Parel which used to sell 5 rupee cupcakes, right? So my big brand, which I worked on, which everybody knew, was L'Oreal Paris. But that was my only big brand. Everything else was, I have sold 5 rupee cupcakes, guys, on Facebook. So understand that as a lot of these brands have come online, therefore opportunities have increased, therefore the work has increased, therefore agencies have increased, therefore, the entire system has churned. At Foxy, I think we've, again, as I said, we've fortunately always had the blessing and the foresight and the right kind of people to always be ahead of the curve, which is why over the course of the last many years, we've been able to establish ourselves as one of the well-known names within digital in India, and very happy and proud to be a part of this organization. But yeah, we've worked not just at Foxy, across the Zoom Media Network. We've worked across multiple clients, I think over 1,000 clients, I think easy so far. Just a little bit about Foxy. So Foxy as a whole represents a confluence of content, media, data, and tech. I don't think the tree is in this presentation, but we typically represent FoxyMoron as a tree, where we say that the analogy to the tree, why? Because data is what forms your roots. And if you think of a tree, the roots is where you get all your nutrition, and which is where data lies, and which is what the role of data needs to be. It enriches whatever it is that you're doing as marketing. The next, which is the trunk of the tree, that for us is the technology, right? Because technology is what pretty much holds everything together. It is what is holding the tree upright. And it would be, in our case, Google, Facebook are also technologies. Websites is also technologies that we build. Any kind of platform that you do on digital is essentially technology. Media forms the branches, because media is the distribution center, right? So media gets your message far and wide, whether it's through paid or organic or whatever. So media, publishing platforms, all of these form the branches of the tree. And finally, content, which we all see and consume and love, is the pretty parts. It's the leaves and the flowers and the fruits and the nice, colorful things that we all see. But one thing that everybody should remember is that those fruits are only going to be yummy and those flowers are only going to be beautiful if the entire tree is well nourished and is doing their respective parts and playing an important role in what the final content and output is. So don't undervalue any of those things. It's great to be to love copy and to love content creation. But each of these parts are extremely important when it comes to advertising, especially digital advertising. Just a little bit about Foxy. We are, of course, all about the Oxymoron. That's how the FoxyMoron story came up. It was started by a bunch of kids in college. They were all 1 year older than myself. So a couple of them are from HR. One of them is from Jai Hind, and one of them was from Sydney. So yeah, very Bombay boys, and started off with a random office somewhere. They started off selling corporate merchandising, so mugs and t-shirts and such. And then somebody said, hey, listen, this Facebook thing is kind of becoming important. Let's try and do something around with it. And that's how it started. And today it is what it is. So that's what Foxy started off as. And today it is one of the, as I said, it's a pretty kick-ass name, and that's where we're at. Over the years, of course, we've worked across multiple categories. And this is something I would also encourage, as students to be mindful of. Make sure that you're not restricted by just one category. So that's my philosophy, not to be restricted by one category, but find yours. Either go depth or go breadth, but don't be neither, right? So either you go into it, like I worked in the beauty category for 3 years before diversify, like as I continue to diversify, but my strength, my foundation, a lot of my core, a lot of my aesthetic, a lot of my understanding comes from the beauty industry. And which is great, because if I'm selling beauty, I'm also being able to sell to women in India, right? But essentially what I'm trying to say is go depth for sure, or then go breadth, where you say, I will work across categories and have, a different portfolio with multiple types of clients, with multiple kind of exposures and different scope of work as well. But do be mindful of this. Of course, when you're younger at an agency, it's not like you can decide and choose, but consciously work towards. If you're not being exposed to a particular industry, but you feel like working on it, nobody's going to say no to a brainstorm. Try brainstorming with people. Try being in some of those rooms, try just landing up in some of those projects, help collab, whichever way you feel like, but always be mindful of how you're building your portfolio and how, you're going ahead from there. So yeah, the big question, what the hell do we do? Beyond, like, I'm sure a lot of you are either studying it in some format or looking at it in some way or the other, through case studies, textbooks. You guys are, obviously everybody has digital and the internet at their fingertips. When I was doing my undergrad, we didn't have WhatsApp. We had BBM. And so everything wasn't as easily accessible to everyone. But yeah, I'm trying to like simplify what we do from like an objective point of view, and therefore then what do different agencies do. So this is the best possible representation that I could find on Google of some of the objectives that we run after, because it's the simplest way. It's very difficult to actually, if you're sitting on the inside of an agency, you almost forget, because these become very, how do I say, hygiene things for you to sort of think of. So it really takes a second to step back and say, okay, what kind of things do we do? So when would a brand or when would a product or when would a company want to have an agency? And what are the kind of briefs or the kind of objectives that they're given? So first and foremost, it is to increase a particular brand or a particular product's awareness. You're launching something, or you are selling something new or selling a newer version of a particular brand or whatever, and you want to get consumers to know about it. So that's typically what we call brand awareness. Then you have standing out from the competition. A lot of times you're trying to give them differentiating factors, right? So if you look at, let's say, technology wars, and you look at OEM providers, so what Samsung and an iPhone war looks like, you're constantly trying to stand out from the competition. And that is when you get, like, that's something you would tell an agency to do, that figure out ways in which we can stand out from the competition. Next is attracting current and potential customers. This, I think, is becoming increasingly more important, especially when it comes to the world of startups now that we live in, right? Because everything is evaluated on ROAS, or everything is evaluated on, let's say, what is my what is my lifetime value of the consumer, one thing I sell to them, what all are they going to do? So when you're looking at the Amazons of the world, or the Flipkarts of the world, or the urban companies of the world, this is what they're running after. They're running after the customer, because the customer is important. Whichever product that customer may buy is secondary to them, but they want that customer to be with them and choose them for life. And so therefore, that's what you're trying to build. Fourth, as it says over here, is educating your business customers. So this can be typically when you look at, B2B becomes a very big space. So let's say you have someone like a McCain who, provides fries to someone like a McDonald's. That's a B2B business. Now, you have many such companies in many verticals and across many industries who have a lot of business partners, which are equally important. When you look at the home and renovation spaces, for instance, they provide a lot of these kind of services across B2B. So when you, let's say, if you have a tile manufacturer, right? One of our clients is Orient Pel Tiles, or let's say Kajaria, Somani, these ones you must have heard of. So when you have a customer like that, their B2C is, of course, people like us, but their B2B would be car showrooms, would be these multi-story Lodha Park residential things, would be commercial complexes. So those kind of B2B solutions also is something that advertising agencies specialize in. So you have agencies which specialize their craft around building these kind of relationships for these brands. Next, you would have, of course, increasing sales volume and ROI. Performance is the name of the game in a lot of ways now, because digital has evolved to be able to attribute sales to a very fine data point. And this is becoming something which is very exciting for the digital industry. This is actually what's also getting a lot of brands today and companies to endorse the medium of digital, because I can tell you where the customer came from, I can tell you what he or she purchased, and I can tell you what they did after that as well. So that's something that becomes interesting. And finally, 7, which is supporting other business operations. So you could get like an HR brief, you could get a CopCom brief, you could get something which is a general business function that you would like to support through advertising. That's typically what, broadly categorizing the kind of briefs that come into your system when you're working in an agency. And in terms of the kind of services that agencies typically provide, this is where the power of the network comes in, right? Where in the heyday, you would have one client who would have multiple agencies who are doing smaller broken down tasks for them. And the aim of any agency or any network today is to try and get the same client to work with the same agency for multiple things. So you're trying to reduce the client's touch points, and you're trying to provide them as much value as you can from what you provide to them. So typically, this is what it would look like. Just to snap back over here. So now that you look at the previous slide, if you look at the bottom, it is all the different verticals and services and everything that you can provide. This is dated. The newer version of this is therefore then categorizing it into solutions, which is kind of what we're doing at the zoo, right? We're specialist agencies instead of scale-based agencies. So it's not that a high-value client and a low-value client would be operated by different agencies, but rather it's like a client who wants video solutions versus influencer solutions. They would get more specialized solutions. So that's also a trend generally in the industry. Like there are a lot more standalone agencies now who provide either one particular function or who provide just one particular aspect of marketing. You have bottom of the funnel agencies, you have top of the funnel agencies, you have creative agencies, you have email marketing agencies. So like, it's become a lot more specialized, and that's kind of the way to the future. And that's what we've built as well. So that's just to put that into context. Now tending to the brief that I was given, which is to talk about what advertising agencies, how they're structured. Broadly speaking, I could think of these 6 types of agencies that exist today. One is typically your mainline, which is TV, print, radio, outdoor, right? That's what they do. Which are the elephants in the industry? I would say your JWTs and your Ogilvies and your, Wunderman Thompsons and Lowlintas, like the typical mainline agencies, very traditional agencies, where you have that kind of a structure and that kind of work, which is mainly to do with traditional media. Second, you have media specialist agencies. This becomes your Group M, Publicis, your those kind of agencies which are mainly looking at only media. So media would be online media and offline media. So people who are buying the billboards, people who are buying the TV spots, people who are buying the kind of media, as you call it, the inventory, that media agency is what would specialize under media. So again, you have a great set of agencies. You have Mindshare, you have Wavemaker, you have BBDO, you have all of these guys who, specialize particularly in media. Then you have digital. So digital is like us, where everything that we click is everything that you can click is what we do. You have, of course, you have Foxy, you have Digitaz, you have Interactive Avenues, you have Glitch, you have all of these different kinds of digital agencies that exist today. Then you have social media. Social media is, I would say, a newer subsection. We very initially, I think in the first couple of years of existence, were just a social media agency. But then, of course, over the years, we graduated into becoming a full funnel agency. But yeah, there are standalone creative outfits which are just social media agencies. What I mean by social media is they would tend to only the brand social media. They wouldn't do performance marketing. They wouldn't do video production. They wouldn't do those kind of things. They would typically be responsible for social media, and then they could outsource all of these other things. So for example, like a Socio Wash, that's a typically only social media kind of agency. Then you have public relations. So PR is a separate section altogether, pretty much. PR works on the earned media part of life. So they would work with different journalists, different publications, different magazines, newspapers, trade media, and the works to work on, of course, public relations for a brand, for products, for celebrities, for whichever aspect you're interested in, and you're endorsing them, or you're enabling them, or contracting them for. And finally, you have branding, creative, boutique. I would put all of those in one section because that is mainly like, it's a supremely specialist creative outfit which wouldn't execute anything. It's more conceptual. So it's very heavy on market research. It's very heavy on, based on the research findings, what colors would you be, what your logo should look like, what kind of comms should you be doing, what kind of tone of voice, etc. you should be doing. Of course, mainline agencies do that as well. But more often than not, actually, I see now brands prefer going to a specialist specific agency to look at only that. And now, of course, you have different combinations of these. So like you'll have an agency like a Thought Over Design, which is a boutique agency, which does creative and website only. So as a part of the website and identity, they build your brand identity as well. So there are a lot of these fun combinations also that exist in India today of multiple permutations, combinations that people are doing. To talk about the structure, so I'm not going to talk about structures of all 6. I think it'll be pretty repetitive. I'm just going to do the 3, which is mainline, media, and digital, just to give you an understanding. So broad strokes, guys, like this is not, agencies are much bigger than this, of course, but I'm just trying to keep it as simple and as easy to understand as possible. So your mainline agency would have these 4 departments primarily. Your client servicing. Client servicing interacts and engages with the client. They take the brief, debrief, break it down, add their own level of intelligence or any data that they have from the client. They appreciate the brief, is what it's called, and then they debrief the internal teams on what the client requirements are. Then you have the planning vertical. So planning is typically your thinking vertical in that sense. So client servicing will brief planning, and planning will come up with, what is the actual consumer insight. So they do a lot of primary research, secondary research, a lot of quant studies, a lot of consumer reviews, and kind of closed room discussions, qualitative discussions, personal interviews, so on and so forth. And based on that, they would sort of conceptualize what is it that the consumer insight is based on the consumer category and context. That insight would then be, driven into the copy and the art teams. And the copy and the art teams, I think, are pretty self-explanatory, where you would be responsible for the copy, the tone of voice, the way that the brand communicates, and the art would, of course, be the visual elements of it. Broad strokes, this is how a mainline agency pretty much functions. These are the 4 core divisions that you find. This is different from a media agency per se, because in the media agency, you have slightly different functions where You have the business team. So the business team typically looks after the client. In media, you don't typically have a client servicing vertical because the client servicing guys are within the business teams. So the business team is someone who's responsible for getting new business, upselling, and also interfacing with the client in one way or the other. Then you have the planning vertical. In this case, it is not planning like mainline, it's planning like media planning. So these guys would be looking at, if the brief is to speak to a female who is between the ages of 18 to 34, where is this female? What is she doing? What is she doing online, or what is she doing offline? What kind of websites or what kind of platforms does she spend her time on? And therefore, where all should my media plan be present, and where all should I be looking at advertising? And then, of course, they're also responsible for getting you the best rates. They're responsible for, like, creating the plan. Essentially, this is where all it'll be. Your buying team is typically the one who's doing the optimizing. So if you have bought inventory, let's say from the Times of India, and you're advertising on their website, so the buying team would either do the exchange, like they would solidify, negotiate, do the rates on methods and platforms such as a Facebook and an Instagram, etc. They would do the bidding as well. So they would, it's like an automated bidding system that they work on. So they constantly keep optimizing. So today you're getting a cost per click of 20 rupees. Their job is to try and bring it down to, let's say, 15 rupees. So their daily job would be to keep optimizing further and further below. And that's, in essence, when you look at the buying team, these are the kind of two functions that they do. They buy the inventory and negotiate the rates, and then they also optimize different campaigns depending on which kind of, whether they belong to the offline ecosystem or the online ecosystem. And finally, you have the strategy team, which is internal to media teams. They come up with effectively they would work on the larger campaigns. They would work on the annual operating plans. So when you look at a media specialist outfit, they are pretty much in control of majority of the media, of the advertising spends, right? Like a brand would spend probably 12% of their budget creating content, but the remaining budgets go in towards advertising and spreading that message out wide. So your strat team essentially works on the larger plans in terms of where a brand should be going, and also working on the products for the agency, like what should my agency's voice be, what should it represent, and therefore how my products should be labeled, what my overall media strategy for the country should be, or for my agency should be. Finally, coming to digital agencies, we have slightly more amount of departments, and that's purely because of the nature of the medium, right? When you look at the medium of digital, it is so far and wide, like these departments need to exist because of that. So you have the account management team, which is slightly different from the client servicing team that we saw, because we don't have a separate strategy team when it comes to digital, or a separate planning team. So your account management team honestly does the culmination of all of these things, where they work with the client, they debrief the internal teams, and they also work on the strategic thinking or the planning. When it comes to digital, fortunately, unfortunately, clients don't give us a lot of time. So typically, like when you look at planning in mainline agencies, you would have 3 months to plan a campaign, right? In digital, we're lucky if we have 3 weeks. So planning as a function isn't very evolved when it comes to digital as a medium, but strat, of course, is evolved regardless. So your account management team almost helms that function within the digital agency. You have the copy teams and the art teams, of course, that we all know. You have the media team within the ecosystem, which does all the buying of media and planning of media, so on and so forth. You have the search engine optimization team, because of course, Google doesn't exist in print and TV, but Google does exist on the internet. So you need somebody to work, and you need the brand to have a solution where you can work on optimizing your search engine rankings. And then finally, you have ORM and social listening. So ORM is online reputation management, which is when looking at what people are saying, what is the feedback that you're getting, and then responding to them in the right kind of way. Social listening is what SL stands for. That's typically sentiment analysis. So is there a backlash? Is there something that people are saying negatively about your product? Is something people are saying positively about your product? Whichever way it may go. And that's that. This actually I put in because I get this question a lot in terms of what is the hierarchy, so to speak, that exists within agencies. This is again, there is no standardized format in different agencies. Sometimes executives are called managers in different agencies. Sometimes managers are called directors in some agencies. But this is the most basic sort of format, at least the ones that we follow. And you can use this as a base point to look at others as well. But you'll have a junior executive, a senior executive. They report into an associate manager. Junior execs, senior execs would typically work on one or two accounts. The associate manager they're reporting into would oversee those one or two accounts within that unit. Your manager typically would be like a team leader of sorts. Your manager would look at 3 to 4 different accounts. Your associate director, whether it's associate creative director, associate account director, associate art director, whichever function you go into, your associate director would be responsible directly at least for one manager, and your director would be responsible for a combination of maybe 2 to 3 managers or 2 to 3 associate directors, depending on the structure of the company. And finally, all the directors report into the head of the department. Now, the department can be the branch, the department can be the vertical, like the function, the department can be, a business unit, whichever way you look at it. So broad strokes, yeah, I mean, the scale that you're looking at, you get into manager where you're looking at probably 3 to 4 brands. You get into the director level where you're looking at 7 to 10 brands minimum, depending on the spends and the volume of work and so on and so forth. So that's how your hierarchy almost looks. And yeah, so I started my career at like a manager level, and I went on to become an account director. And then I went on to become a business head. So that's typically how, you go. Of course, I skipped a few, but that's because I had done other things in life before joining the company. So yeah. Overall, guys, more than the history, the whatever geography and the architecture of it, it's fun. I won't deny that. That's the one thing that, everything that you hear about it being fun, the fun is true. We're also very serious, but it is pretty much fun. I say this to people. I was like, I don't think my job is what keeps me going. I think it's the people that keeps me going. You want to come to work because you enjoy working with people. You make so many stories and you make so many, different kinds of memories. Somebody's messed around with somebody fell somewhere, somebody got, wasted and did something else, and someone showed up. Like, it's random stuff. People say rubbish in meetings sometimes. People blank out in meetings sometimes. I've had like epic fails in pitches. You go through a lot. You do go through a lot, because as being a part of advertising, you're pretty much bearing your core when you're talking to a client, or when you're putting yourself out there, because it's your ideas. It is what you think is going to work. You're putting that in front of someone, and they can just shit on it if they want to. But what you get out with is you get out with your team. So you go in with your team and you get out with your team. And that's kind of, what keeps it going. And yeah, we love to party as at the zoo, as Foxy. We love our food. We pretty much, every festival is celebrated. We have way too much fun, sometimes I think for our own good. There have been times where, one thing leads into another, one meeting goes into another, one day goes into another, and you just don't get to know. But yeah, things get much easier when you're surrounded with the right kind of people, and we're humans at the end of the day. So I think the connection is what everyone's looking for. And that's just us. That's some of us. This is 2019, I think. That's when we had our last offsite. So an offsite is where we take all our peeps and we go somewhere for like 2 to 3 days and have fun. What else am I going to say? But yeah, that's good. This if is my favorite poem. Has been for many years. I'm not going to read it out. Please don't get me wrong. Read it yourself. I think it is something that, as I would say to anybody who I'm working with or anybody who I advise, that I think this is one of the most beautiful poems written from the point of view of what to expect in life. And go back to it in a second or whenever you want to and just read it. It's by Rudyard Kipling. And it was written in 1895, but trust me, apply it to any lens and it'll still be true, whether it's social media or filters or relationships or whatever. But yeah, do give it a shot. And whenever you do. And finally, last piece of advice, no matter what you're doing, be present, be in the moment. Don't be distracted by your phones. Don't be distracted by your relationships. Don't be distracted by your anxieties. Be present in the moment, take it easy, and always remember to have fun. No matter what you do in life, it's always just going to be a job. A job is what you do, it is not who you are. So stay true to who you are, and everything else is clockwork, right? So don't try to be something else, don't try to be someone else, don't try to fit in. Always strive to stand out. And that's kind of what life is about. And you keep doing that, you'll be good. Yay! Not bad. I finished like an hour before schedule. I'm done. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Prachi. So now how do we go about questions, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can have them in the chat box so that we can go in an order. I'm sure they'll have questions. Yeah. Atya.
Yeah. Go for it.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, how has the work from home been culture been in your company, and do you think it will last even after COVID? Like, do you think Zoom Media will adapt to work from home for those who choose to do so, or will it not?
So thank you. That's a very interesting question. How has work from home been? Honestly, very shitty, because as I said, we live on the fun that we have together, and the interaction that we have with each other. Also, besides the fun and games, the nature of the industry is such that you have to work with different functions, right? So a copy guy has to work with an art guy has to work with like a video guy. So why work from home sucked was because every time, instead of me calling the guy and saying ye design dekho, I have to render the design, I have to email it to him, then he will see it over there, then he will give feedback, then he will send it back. So it's been a major mess from that point of view. A lot of people unfortunately went through a lot of personal trauma and trouble, and very, very real troubles during work from home. I think in the industry as a whole, a lot of people lost jobs. We as Zoo took a very clear stance from day one that no matter what happens, we will not fire anybody within the years, because we don't want to be responsible, or we would never condone something like this where you can't it's a pandemic. It happens probably once in 3-4 generations. We're not going to leave our people hanging in the middle of that. So we had a very conscious stance right at the beginning that we would never ever let people go in this time. Unfortunately, a lot of agencies did. That sucked. But it's picking up, as I said. Now it's honestly Bombay, and I am from Bombay, so I was in Bombay like 2 weeks ago. But Bombay is very scared right now of a lot of things, and it's operating in that fashion. But pretty much most of the countries actually opened up. Our Bangalore office, as I said, Gurgaon office, the markets here are open. If I could flip around I would show you, like, there's hundreds of cars in the parking lot. Everyone's here. Everyone's very active. How do I see it going forward in the future? I think there are going to be, so brands, honestly, brand managers, client side, they have the luxury, and a lot of MNCs also are endorsing the culture where it's a couple of days in a month from office and a lot of days from home. So like I was speaking to, for example, the CMO of ST Lauder last week, and he said that they've had a global policy where 10 days is working from office in a month, and the remaining 12 days, because you have 22 working days in a month. So the remaining 12 days are work from home. So I think the client side is going to endorse a hybrid working culture, but I think the agency side is pretty much going to be, all guns blazing. Everyone's going to walk into office with social distancing and those kind of things, of course, but it's still going to have to be come to office. Probably, of course, if you're unwell, sick, so on and so forth, then you wouldn't. Then you would take those days off, or you would be more cautious and stuff. But I see it opening up. I see a lot of agencies have already opened up full-fledged. So how soon and when people make it mandatory, to be more specific, that depends. Like I have been wanting to make it mandatory, but then I've been waiting whether third wave is happening or third spike is happening or nothing is happening. So that is going to change the timeline of when it becomes compulsory to come to office for everybody. But it's a matter of time. It will happen for agencies for sure. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
Greetings from fellow Scottishite.
Yay!
I wanted to ask a question as to you've dealt with a lot of employees, you've dealt with a lot of minds which have come to work at Zoo as well. And I wanted to ask is, have you seen the transition of people going from a completely, like your absolute math whiz guys who are completely away from creative to now into more creative roles, into more creative contribution roles? Have you seen that over time when you have been there, or has it been like you have just these boxes all over?
No, for sure. We have a lot of engineers who work for us. We have a lot of people from non-creative backgrounds who have become copywriters and become creative writers. The current CD in the North, he's an engineer by study. Like he literally has, he likes to call himself a scientist, but well, he is a scientist because he legit has a couple of patents, of some things he had done in college. But yeah, he's science through and through. He's an army kid, did science all his life and landed up in creative. I don't think that is to determine either or. Have I seen a lot of math whizzes? Yes. If I look at my two founders, so Pratik, who is one of the founders, he is again from an IB background, did commerce, never studied anything to do with marketing. Xavier is a lawyer by profession. He did BMS and then he did law. And so yeah, there is no such boxing of things that happens. And I think more and more as younger people, as they're developing, everyone's growing up on the internet, right? So people are content creators by default. Like I have a girl who's like a senior executive in the client servicing team and she's got 34,000 followers on Instagram. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Right. But like, this is the world. This is now where the young, like, I'm not old, but like, this is where the very Gen Z of everything kind of shows up. Guys, I'm 32. I'm really not qualified as old. Okay. It's cool.
Have you seen team members from your company shift within the company as well? I mean, in different departments, like you have.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I've had people. So people move laterally, and people, of course, move horizontally, like vertically as well. So by laterally, I mean like I've had short copywriters who've gone on to become script writers within the production house, right? I've also had office boys become SEO guys. I've had accounts guys become ORM guys. So those things happen. Like, for example, today we have someone called Akshit, who's one of our oldest employees at the zoo. He used to be he used to be somebody who was an admin. So he helped set up this office. Then he moved to head the Delhi team, the media team for Delhi. And then now he heads the ORM and the social listening piece for the entire agency. So very diverse, cuts that way. So yes, people move in whichever direction as well. I've had people, for instance, they used to be in probably creative writing as a space. They have gone on to become producers as well. So, it pretty much it's fluid, honestly, like that. It's very flexible also. I don't know if we're lucky at the zoo, but my understanding is yes, it is a lot more flexible. I think very late in your career, it becomes kind of irritating if you keep moving at a senior level. So if you do want to experiment, you get an idea. Once you get into an agency, you know what you like, what you don't, which is why I was saying, like, dabble in different projects, right? Work on different things. Try writing copy for something. So if you're probably, let's say, an account management person and you want to get into the copywriting side of things, try it out. Do it on the side to figure out if you like it or you don't like it, and then take a call. Don't just switch because I had an existential crisis. So
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, good evening. So I had a question related to consultancy services. So while running a consultancy service, the client tells us what are the requirements, right? So when the consultancy starts with the requirement, so where does it end? It ends when the objective for the client is over, or it just ends with the consultancy?
It just ends with the consultancy. So it would end with them crafting a solution. They are not responsible for delivering on the solution.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if I had to explain it to you in the context of, let's say, something we've done. So we were consulted to come up with, you've heard of Luminous as a company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
LED
Luminous,
lights, right?
yeah, the lights and fans and those guys. They also are very big in solar lights, for example. So they contracted our consulting arm to research on what is the kind of studying that consumers are doing on digital before they are making purchases, whether they're on ground or online. So my consulting arm, they did that primary research and they found out all of that and they gathered their learnings and they gave those inputs. Then my client would contact Foxy to deliver on those solutions. If this is what the consumers or the customers are looking for, then what is the best way to reach them? What is the best kind of communication to give them? What is the kind of strategic approach? What platform should we be on, etc. So Foxy becomes the delivery, like the actual implementation is something that the FoxyMoron as an agency would do. And the solutioning or the go-to-market, as very loosely, if we call it, the go-to-market is what a consulting or a firm would come up with.
So while delivering if FoxyMoron is delivering, and while the process, if they want consultancy for something else for the same project, they can go back to the consultancy arm, right?
In theory, yes. In practical, no, because consultants are really, really expensive. So in theory, yes. Theoretically, yes. I mean, again, the context of the zoo is kind of different, because my consultancy chick would be like in a chair next to me and be like, listen, what did you mean by this? But that's because, we're all a part of the same family of agencies. But if the consultants were to be out external, I can't pick up the phone on them because they're a different agency, I'm a different agency. So I can't say, hey, listen, what did you mean? Or can you do a little bit more of this? Because they would end, so they finish the solution and then they...
it's a one-time thing.
It is a one-time thing, yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hello. So I had two questions. Since you said your agency is in, for example, Gurgaon, Mumbai, Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
So how is the working culture different when you're working in Gurgaon or when you're working in Mumbai or you're working some other place? Since I live in Gurgaon, so I was kind of keen to know that if I'm going to work in an agency, what would be different in terms of the whole culture if I work in Mumbai or if I work here?
Come to office tomorrow, you will find out what the culture is. It's Friday. Yeah. No, honestly, it's culture between the three. I don't think, culture belongs to Foxy, right? So it's the Foxy culture that transcends. It would be the interactive avenues of the Digitas culture that would transcend. The agency holds the culture, or the organization, so to speak, holds the culture. The nature of the market is different. So within the three cities, what I've at least observed is you'll have Bombay has a lot more BFSI clients and a lot more MNCs are based out of Bombay. Delhi Gurgaon has a lot more family-owned businesses, a lot more manufacturing, a lot more auto, because all the factories are right here and so on and so forth. So they're headquartered out of here. And Bangalore has all the startups and the food scenes and the pet startups and all those kind of things are pretty much based out of Bangalore. So the markets are different in terms of the nature of work. And therefore, of course, the price points are also different. Like services in Bombay are a little more, they're paid for a little better versus services in Delhi versus services in Bangalore. Bangalore is the newest when it comes to advertising. Bombay's, of course, been the mecca of advertising in India since the beginning. So that kind of changes. But yeah, I don't think culture is to do with the cities. Culture is to do with what the company stands for and what it sees as its product and what it sees the agency being. And then, I mean, of course, now if we get into things like language and all, that's different.
Yeah.
Right. That's anywhere. That would be in any kind of college also, or any kind of party also that you go to. A Delhi party would be different from a Bombay party, right? That's just the way it is.
So the second question of mine is pretty basic, but since I am inclined towards both advertising and marketing, so how is it different? Like you're working in advertising and you're working in marketing. Can you tell me what I don't know how to frame that question right, but
Marketing is a larger function. Advertising falls under marketing. That's the simplest way I can say it. So marketing is almost like the universal set. And then you have advertising, you have sales, you have PR, you would have distribution. So all of these things are technically a function of marketing. That's how you should look at it. How the jobs would differ is that you could be, actually there's a very Indian context of looking at it, is that marketing is client side, advertising is agency side. ऐसे कुछ नहीं होता. Their title is marketing manager doesn't mean that they do anything different from what we do. They basically approve what we do. There's no real difference in that thing. Of course, there is a distinction when it comes to the roles that you perform. So the agency, like us, would be responsible for a lot of the functions which are to do with core advertising, which is the communication aspect of it, right? It is, we are in the business of communication, and we are in the business of making sure that that communication drives value, right? So I am responsible for making sure that somebody looks at a 20-seconder, is convinced about your product, so he clicks on the ad and then he goes to e-commerce. Then when he goes to e-commerce, I will make sure that he sees the right product, or he sees my product over there. And on e-commerce, I can put up different fancy things and videos and this and that to make sure that he buys. Abhi wo khareedta hai ki nahi, I can't, beyond taking him till the e-commerce platform and showing him everything I have to, the advertising cannot go beyond that. Then it totally depends on the product or the service or whatever it is that he or she is on that website for. And then their experience depends on, of course, what they bought into and the quality of the product. What marketing would entail, I think, a little larger than this. And that's why client side is slightly different, because they are not just responsible for the advertising or the communication, but they would be responsible for sales, like which product to launch next, what is the new product development, which markets, if we are big in, let's say the top, the UP, Bihar, Jharkhand sort of belt, how do we get into the south? Do we launch separate products for the south? Do we continue with the same products and then do we do something else? So on and so forth. So like to be a brand manager, for example, a lot of my friends obviously are brand managers. They have to have sales experience, for instance, because you can't do a marketing or a brand manager kind of role without having sales experience. So, I mean, does that answer your question in a way?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, good evening, ma'am. I had a question related to what Johan had asked about shifting departments. So, for example, if today, like if I have considerable number of experience in the account management side, and for example, if I'm the account director and I suddenly want to shift to creative, so will I have to start off as a copywriter again, or will I? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's a completely different. It's like me. Same thing. Like when you're looking at art and copy.
Yeah.
If you're a designer versus if you're a copywriter, they're different skill sets. So if you're an account director, and then if you want to become a creative director, you may not start off as junior copywriter, but at best you'll start off as is probably like a team manager or like an account manager, creative manager.
Right. So if I'm shifting departments, I have to, like, it's equivalent to starting over in terms of your designation.
In terms of your designation, see, honestly, the designation ka itna nahi hai. Aap designation leke, what are you going to do if you can't do the job anyways?
Right.
Right. So think of that, because it's a different skill set. Now, if you were to hypothetically move from being an account manager to becoming, let's say, a business development manager, you can do that, right? You can even shift from being like an account manager to a business development associate director type of position, right? Because if you understand this realm, it's easier for you to understand that realm. So that time you wouldn't lose necessarily designations because your skill set is similar. In the same way, but you could become account manager, client servicing for media, for instance, but you couldn't become delivery for media because you don't know how to optimize the ads. Then how will you lead a team, right, to optimize the ads? Think of it that way. So it's more by function. Like a writer to a writer is easier, right? than doing a writer to an art guy or a writer to an. It's not that it's unheard of. Please don't get me wrong. करने के लिए सब कुछ कर सकते हैं, provided you innately either have that skill or you have been developing that skill on the side and therefore you want to express it and therefore you want to do it. So it's situational. But yeah, if it's a completely different function, you would have to earn your chops, you'd have to earn your respect, you'd have to work on it and work on your skill and deliver on your skill.
Okay, ma'am, thank you. And I have another question. Talking about agency work hours, I mean, I've worked for like about 2 years. And no matter how much we try, somehow, you know, the late work hours and working weekends come in. So, I mean, I just wanted to understand how does one, you know, balance that out? How does one bring about the work-life balance? And are there HR policies at Foxy to probably ensure that, you know, overworking doesn't become a culture?
Yes. So again, this is my favorite question because I was actually talking Janvi, who leads my like the Copcom for the Zoom Media Network. She's on this call, and we were in fact having this conversation a couple of days ago. I'm not here to give you a textbook answer. I'm going to give you a real answer. It's called self-accountability, right? You have to be responsible for your own self because you're a working adult. You are a fully grown human being who is earning a living off of this job. So it's not like your boss is has tied you to a chair and, you know, making you do work. We're not in that kind of a domain at all. So provided you are responsible for planning out your work, provided you are responsible and skilled at doing what you are required to be done, required to do, provided you've put in the right kind of thought process, the right kind of you know, culmination of facts, of references, of research, in order to deliver on what you're supposed to do, everything is manageable. So a lot of times I feel like what people don't understand, and maybe it's a nature of, you know, it's something that's come out as a result of the pandemic or whatever. You have to also be aware of what's on your plate already. And you have to be aware of how much time you're going to take to deliver what's on your plate. So if your manager is giving you more work and you already know I'm blocked, if you don't know you're blocked, you're in that situation where you're like, sure, ye de diya hai. But if you are in a place where you know you have 8 things to do in 8 hours in a day, and you know you're going to take 8 hours or 9 hours probably to deliver those things, at that time the manager is allotting you more work, you need to have a conversation and saying, hey, I have these things planned. This is what it's going to take for me to deliver on this. What do you think I can deprioritize or move around? Or if you would like me to work on this piece, is there something you can pass on to somebody else? Or is that something that you can take up yourself in order to do these kind of things? Have a structured conversation, right? The worst excuse you can give is, I have a lot of work. Oh my God, I'm working so many hours. No, that's not how life works, right? I mean, I've gone from working on 4 brands to working on 12 brands to working on 20 brands to working on now 50 brands across the agency. So in my day, I go from an ORM meeting to a creative pitch to a client meeting to an HR review to a performance management pitch. So like, that's the nature, that's the ambition, right? That's what I wanted to do and I wanted to be. And is it important to maintain work-life balance? 100% yes. But do you have to work hard to discipline yourself and more importantly, to discipline your brain? I don't look at my phone unless I really have to. You know, till date, my phone at 9:45 p.m. goes on DND, which means I'm not to be disturbed. So only like my favorites can call me, because I know that when I'm at home, I am at home and I need to switch off my brain so that I can deliver the next morning and do really well, right? And this is not discipline that comes like that. It's discipline that you have to work towards. I used to initially get extremely triggered by emails and, you know, by like things on weekends that, oh my God, my client is emailing me on the weekend. It's not that I have, it's not that I can have that attitude from day one saying, hey, I don't work on weekends. But I've been doing this for a very, very long time and for many, many years, right? So you earn your respect. You earn that relationship with the client where you're like, listen, I work really hard during the week to align everything that you want. So if I've made a call to my client on a Friday at, let's say, 11 o'clock in the morning and say, buddy, there are these 5 things that I need to do today. Is there anything else that's going to rock your boat which I need to know about? Or is there anything else that's going to come up that you're probably going to tell me last minute, that tell me now? Right? Now that again, if you call up, pick up the phone on a client and say, buddy, you're fired. But like, you have to work your way to that relationship. You have to earn your respect. You have to pay your dues, right? I have spent enough and more years roughing it out, as you call it, because you earn your stripes. I've spent many nights in office. I still have a toothbrush in office. I have not used thankfully have had to use a toothbrush in office for like 5 years now. But the first 3-4 years, you have to struggle, because that's the job. That's how you learn. You know, in order to become faster at something, you need to understand how that task works in its entirety. So when I became an account director, it's not like I said, oh, I won't make case studies. No, if I want to win awards, I have to sit with my video team all through the night and make case studies and enter them for awards, right? As a business head, I didn't have to do it. I had to probably just review it at a certain point. But you know, once you learn how to, then it becomes faster. Everything, it's human, it's your brain essentially, right? Because this is a service industry. Everything is powered by this. There's no hard skill. So it's about training your brain to do better, to work faster, to work in a more efficient way so that you know what you want. And work-life balance is something you strive towards. Of course, it's a constant struggle. Sometimes I still struggle with it, and it will always be. But that doesn't mean that you are not mindful of it, or you don't think about it, or you don't consciously work towards it. I don't believe that the organization is responsible for my work-life balance. They are not paying me for more than 8 hours. They are not even asking me to work for more than 8 hours, right? They're not. Neither is my boss. My boss is basically saying, this is the task, get it done. And then they will multiply it. So you have to know what your capacity of delivery is to be able to say, okay, I can't multiply any further. And of course, your efficiency and your skill set determines how many such things you can do, how quickly can you do them, how well can you do them. If you're doing 10 things and if you're going to make mistakes in 7, your manager is going to be like, yeah, dude, not working out. Because it is a competitive industry. That's also the reality, right? If you don't want to do it, someone else is going to do it. And that's just India. That is not to do with advertising. That's how every industry in India is. So the first few years, you have to earn your respect in the system. Like another thing that I was referring to, which is empathy and collaboration and teamwork. Today, my designers taught me the aesthetics of design, which is why I can give feedback on design, right? But in order to understand and listen to them, I have to be with them in those conceptualizing meetings. I have to be with them in the brainstormings to understand how each of these departments work. So you have to, beyond the theory, the practical knowledge is going to come on the job. And so when you're working with people and you're collaborating with people, it's not a solo sport. This is a team sport. So yeah, you are responsible for your own work-life balance. But for that, you need to know what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you need to work towards, and therefore how you manage your time. Abhi aaj ki tarikh mein, if you're giving exams, nobody's going to say work-life balance then, right? Because you know what portion you have to do. So you know you have to finish that before the exam. What's the point of finishing 2 chapters after the exam? You can't, right? Now you can't go to your teachers and say, oh, work-life balance. I couldn't finish studying this chapter tonight. Tomorrow is the exam. So I have to sleep because work-life balance. And so I can't attempt this question in the paper. Same rules. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I was just wondering, you talked about sentiment analysis a while back. I want to know what it entails, and also its place in your government and CSR projects, specifically political communication.
It's massive.
Yeah. What happens there?
So social listening and sentiment, which is as a result of sentiment analysis as a result of that. So what it does is there are multiple tools which are available, right? There's something called Sprinkler, there's something called Locobuzz, there are many such tools which are available. What they do is they track conversations across the internet. Now, depending on what your band or whatever, what all are you tracking? You can track only social media, You can track additional websites such as Quora. Then you can track third-party websites also, which would be anywhere on the internet. So you put in certain keywords and you put in your brand names, you put in your probably ambassadors' names, you put in your product names and such. And the tool essentially flags off any conversation on the internet which is happening around that keyword. And then you see like a massive dashboard which has a volume of conversations. Then you can automate, so the computer generates certain amount of sentiment. So based on the keywords in the thing. So if it says, I hate Vodafone, right? It will track that as negative. Or probably if it's, I mean, now obviously machine learning and intelligence has reached a very high level, but just for ease of explanation, if it says Vodafone sucks, so the computer may or may not be able to flag off sucks as negative or positive. So it'll put it in neutral. And then if it says, I love Vodafone, that will go as positive. And when it comes to social, and this is a very rudimentary example, huh? Please don't get me wrong.
No,
it's a lot more advanced than this, very, very comprehensive. And then what you typically work on is based on this listening and based on the sentiment analysis, you're constantly working towards getting the negative to neutral and getting the neutral to positive. So that can be supported through conversations, which would be online reputation management, where the brand talks back to the customer or to the particular thing that has been flagged off. Or it could be through content, right? Like if you have, let's say in the last month, probably a phone launched and it bombed, right? Like 10 batteries caught fire, or there's like a lot of negative sentiment around it. Kuch to ho gaya. Then the brand can either choose to have like a solve to it where it withdraws that phone from the market hypothetically, or it could have a thing where it releases content to answer those particular queries. Or it could be like, some brands have like a recurring problem. Like if you look at anything which is in Tetra packs or like chocolates and these kind of industries, you'll always have people complaining कि इसमें कीड़ा है, इसमें धब्बा है, those kind of things. So the brands could also have custom curated ready responses in the format of videos or texts or images or science or infographics, whichever, which you use to respond to those queries depending on the nature. So it depends on the strategy that the brand is employing, the tone of voice, the conversation that it's employing. But yeah, typically social listening and so therefore ORM, they work hand in glove to make this mechanism come alive. The second part of your question, its importance in government and CSR is massive. CSR a little less, not because of
I was just wondering in terms of political communication generally.
Political communication a lot. So we actually did a 3-year project for Make in India, where we did their social listening and online reputation management, and therefore that filtered even into their website content. So this was in the initial years of Make in India when it had just launched. And we would do listening analysis depending on whichever country our ministers, let's say the Minister of Textile is going into Dubai to speak at a food expo, right? Or like at a particular expo. So we would be doing like sentiment analysis around those conversations, around industry topics, around the country and the relationships. So what is the sentiment of crowds and populations who are going to be present at an expo versus what our minister is probably going to talk about or going to address and so on and so forth. Those sentiments we would then map in the pre and then measure and probably give possible questions or possible things that need to be addressed. And then once that happens, then that goes and filters into the client, which in this case was Make in India, which would then get translated to the minister. And then depending on their strategy, they would either address those things or not. And this would happen even post. Similarly, more than an in-person example, let's say there is a lot of heat in the market, for instance, or there's a new food expo that's coming up or a new policy that they have launched with regards to FDIs. And there's some sort of backlash that they're getting on the internet, or they're getting trolled, okay, this is rubbish, this is not effective, this is not going to work, etc. So then we would create content explaining that policy, detailing it out a little bit, speaking about the new FDI investments that have happened in that category or that sector, getting some industry experts to weigh in on it, put out that piece of content, put that up on the Make in India website, put that up on the social media pages, so that, the sentiment is being answered. And then hopefully also respond using that content to the people who raise those questions. Does that?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to the analysis, what type of qualification do you look for in terms of your researchers?
In terms of researchers for what? For social listening?
So for social listening, yeah.
So I would say data analytics as a skill set is something which would be very useful, which means like, you should be able to spot anomalies or like be good with statistics more like, so it's a combination of statistics and data analytics, because you are looking at large quantums of data in one go. So you should be able to spot patterns and derive insights from that in terms of how it works or what which is the direction in which it's going, and statistics, because at the end of the day, every conversation gets boiled down to a number. So do you have to be good at math? Not necessarily. You have to be good at statistics. So if you do want to, again, like, we'd be happy to chat. You can email one of us and you can speak to our social listening head. Would be happy to have this conversation. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll ask for the email at the end.
Yeah.
Finally, to what extent do the analysts contribute to the content that goes after, or does it just stop like the way consultants stop?
So again, it depends. Practically, it depends on the nature of the brand and the nature of the business. Like I've had, for instance, we have Burger King as one of our clients. And we do the piece where the ORMs and the social listening speaks to the content. So on a monthly basis, when the ORM report goes out, the ORM team will suggest certain topics that could be addressed or should be addressed. And then the content team takes that and puts that into the next month's content. Similarly, as I explained the workflow for Make in India, that was also listening into content. Does it happen on all brands? Not necessarily. Especially when it comes to things like, technology brands, when it comes to things like makeup brands, etc., where there are a lot of conversations in general. That doesn't always necessarily delve into content. But on the flip side, if I had to give you like a very massy example, Airtel doing that annoying girl ad about jahan pe bhi jaye wo internet, this thing hai. So, those kind of things come at the end of the day, listening to sentiment and conversations also. So it can go as big as you want and as small as you want. The brand have to be ready for it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome.
To add to that annoying girl, she's actually an alumni of XIC.
Wonderful. She's done really well for herself.
Yeah.
I mean, that ad was released, I think, 7 or 8 years ago, but everyone still remembers the ad.
Yeah. Remembers the annoying girl, at least.
Yeah.
Hi, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time out to address us. I know how agencies work. Must be hard.
My pleasure.
I just had a small question. Like, I've had the privilege of working for an agency for about 2 years. And I have dealt with multiple clients. Some were easy, some were disgustingly difficult to deal with. And I've, of course, been on both ends of the spectrum where my managers have been like, you got to deal with it. It's part of the parcel. And then my managers have fought back with the client. So along this, I figured out that a company policy needs to be in place wherein like there's a certain amount of, for the lack of a better word, drama that they can handle from the client. Like if I'm not talking like in terms of just briefs or random feedback, I'm talking like in terms of just unreasonable things, like they give, say, 10 big briefs in a row and then shit just never goes live.
Yeah.
It's just never pan out, and it's just necessary work that they keep making us do over and over. So does Foxy have a policy like that where they stand up to the client and side with the employees?
Oh, 100%. I have a very bad reputation in this department where I am kind of like I'm sorry there are teachers on this call, but I'm the bitch because I don't, nobody can treat my people badly. That's one of the things that, I think I got that also from Pratik and Xavier, because disrespect doesn't fly regardless, right? And at the end of the day, you have to be very strong when it comes to a commercial sense. And I think more and more clients, at least when it comes to an agency like Foxy, they're willing to listen when I'm trying to explain something to them. Very real example, I'll give you a conversation. Yesterday, I was in a call with the CEO of a company, and I was trying to elevate the conversation into, okay, what's the business vision? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do as a brand in the country? So on and so forth. And his minion kept dragging it back into, but the creatives don't get done in time, but the creatives don't happen in time, but this is happening. your retainer work doesn't happen in time, ye wo. And then I kind of, as I said, I'm notorious for this. I gave her a piece. I said, finish talking, then I'll explain. Then I explained the commercials to her, right? Now it is up to her maturity. Ideally, she should not have brought it up in front of her CEO because eventually she'll look stupid. She could have asked for a separate discussion with me or with my team and said, okay, let's iron out the operational issues, but she chose to brought it out in a forum. I explained to her that when you're looking at a retainer structure, you have X number of deliverables, which I'm supposed to give you in a month as a part of the retainer. You want to do 2X extra, which is on a VAS or a value added services, as we call it, basis, which is separate billing. The nature of the industry in general and of the agency is such that the VAS work is not allocated to a fixed team. So it will be getting done by whoever has got free bandwidth. So I said, if you want a fixed team to do it, then you pay me for it. You're not paying me for it. So why should you get the first right of my time? You won't. So your deliverable issue is because you refuse to pay me enough money for what you're asking me for. If you pay me enough money, I'll put enough bodies on the business. If there are enough bodies on the business, you won't have bandwidth issues, right? And then so you have to stand up no matter what. You have to stand up to for your people. At the same time, I am very strict with my teams as well. Don't get me wrong. Like, I am not some crusader just for the agency. I'm a very fair person. And I think that's what is required to survive in the industry and be good at it and you know, last long as well and earn the respect of both client and your peers, right? So I'm not going to sit here and listen to my designers cribbing saying similar to what somebody, oh, bahut kaam hai and all. How much are you delivering? Let's talk numbers and let's talk commercials. So I think it's also important for agencies to have the distinction between respecting creative freedom versus respecting commercial boundaries. Right? So what are my billable hours? How are they getting used? Are they getting used to the fullest? Are they getting used to the best? So before I even present an argument to the client, I will do an internal analysis. Okay, is it that we are crying wolf, right? Is it that we have actually not finished within timelines or within expected deliverables and we're just trying to transfer that pressure back onto the client? And then you do have different checks and balances. So within our network, we have a system called Calamari and a system called ClickTime. Both are like HRMS softwares, and you log in your hours on different projects. So if you're working on, let's say, social media banners or whatever for some client, you would log that in, and I say that I spent 2.5 hours on that in a day. And then you would log in what brands you're working on what projects. And then that gets collated and curated at the end of every month or at the end of every quarter. And that's how it gets monitored. So if there is an inordinate amount of time being spent, you would analyze, is it a resourcing problem? Is it a process problem? Or is it a client problem? And then you take it from there. So business intelligence comes from HR tools. And yes, so those HR tools exist to answer your question specifically as a policy and as our mission, as you'd said, which is why we want to work with industry leaders and thought leaders. Right? It doesn't matter if you're not leading your industry, but even if you're leading by thoughts and by wanting to have a pleasant working culture and a working atmosphere, and you don't treat us like vendors, but you treat us as business partners. That's what we're looking for. And if we get the sense, and believe you me, I've had this with a couple of very well-known clients literally in the last 2 months, where we won the pitch. We pitched you. I'm sure you guys, as and when those who've worked, pitches are intense. It takes 2 months to close a lead. So we've pitched, we've won the pitch, we've been awarded the business. And our first couple of interactions with their meetings went really poorly. And we walked out of those partnerships. We said, we're sorry, but we don't think you're tuned to, because they're just going to put my team through hell because they are not organized at their end, or they don't have the wherewithal, or they don't have the right kind of answers, or the business plan or the vision. So these are things you learn with experience. But these are also things that organizationally you need to have the right mindset for. So my BD team flagged it off, my account management team flagged it off, and then finally I took a decision saying, okay, cool, doesn't make sense, right? So checks and balances, as I said, resources, process, and client. You need to look at where what is falling short.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, so I wanted to know, like, since you're serving as the business head for FoxyMoron, so I wanted to understand the business development aspect of an agency, like how do we get clients, how do we pitch in, and what all activities are involved in the business development team?
So Honestly, BD teams are different across different agencies. That's a fact, because in a lot of agencies, the BD teams are only coordinating and not really working on the pitch. And the pitches get worked on by the internal, like the account management and the copy and the art teams. In some agencies, such as ours, we have a centralized business development team. So they work across all businesses for the zoo. So what they would do is, of course, they would get the lead from wherever. They would check whether it makes sense or not. We have certain criteria based on which we evaluate potential leads. If it meets all those criteria, then we would take on the lead. We would coordinate the time and when we'd be getting back to them with the presentation. We would understand the brief, appreciate the brief, break it up into, okay, because we have so many verticals also, right? Foxy has 5 verticals, plus we have 7 agencies. So who needs to address which part of the brief? And then split out the brief and then work on like an integrated strategy to bring it back together. Sometimes if the briefs are quick and easy, then the BD teams do it themselves. So if they don't need external media support, or if they don't need external like influencer support, then they would pull that off by themselves as well, because we have a central unit, right? So they do know how to address the brief from end to end. But typically, if it is a larger pitch and a larger brief, then they would break it up into functions, let them process the brief, and then bring it back and then tie it back together. And then they, of course, go pitch along with whoever's worked on it. That pitch then moves into commercials, and either it goes into commercials and procurement, or sometimes it could also go into second round, third round. So you meet one round of clients, then after some time you meet their boss, then sometimes after that you meet the CEO. So it depends on pitch to pitch, brand to brand. But yeah, this is as briefly as I can explain that part.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Good evening. First of
Good
all,
evening.
I'm really liking this session, and you are really, you really speak very nicely and explain very nicely. So,
Thank you. That's
yeah.
very sweet of you. Thank you.
Yeah. So my question to you would be that I believe that FoxyMoron once was a startup. Let's assume that. Yeah. So like I wanted to ask that what's the inside story of really scaling up? Like even at a startup, people don't have certain designations, right? They are bound to work at every places, be it content ka planning, yeah, content ka writing or anything, because it's a startup. So
Right.
like what's the inside story of scaling up apart from onboarding big clients, according to you, for any agent?
Sure. So I think see, I would say one thing is we were at the right place at the right time, to be very honest, as an agency. We started doing this when no one was doing this in the country. And that kind of propelled us in a very fast way into the market, because we were the cool guys with the cool conversations, with the fun things to say in meetings. So I think as an organization, as you said, if I look at beyond getting big brands, what needs to be done. Also, sorry, before I say that, definition of startup 13 years ago was very different to definition of startup today, right? Because today, when you look at startup, it is pretty much to do with funding and those kind of avenues of startups, which is not necessarily what we were. We have never been funded. We're pretty much started with what we started with, and we've scaled by ourselves. So when I look at, let's say, a small scale agency and starting up from there, you have to constantly innovate. I think that is one of the core things that you have to learn and work on when it comes to being in advertising. Because if you're not striving for innovation, whether it's to do with strategy, whether it's to do with product communication, whether it is to do with how you approach a particular business problem, how you approach a particular platform, so on and so forth. If you don't strive for that innovation, I think that's one of the things that always led to Foxy's success. That clients, big or small, we built a reputation for always being the ones who had something interesting to say. So no matter who we were in a room with, whether it was a known client or an unknown client or a client sitting out of Crawford Market, it didn't matter. We would always work really hard to have that twist in the tail, or to have something fun or something that they had never seen before. right? So creatively, innovatively, that was something that how we stood out and how we differentiated always. I think the second thing is, yes, as you rightly said at the beginning. So when I also started my career at Foxy, we didn't have separate art, copy, account management teams. We had an art team and we had a content team. So I was in the content team. Now the content team only wrote the copy, the content team only briefed the art guy, made the creative and posted on social media, right? As the nature of, because tabhi there was no ads on social media. Also understand like the platforms have evolved massively, which is why functions have also evolved. And I think one of the good things or one of the things that made us successful is we were able to spot these trends very early. So we therefore we kept structuring and restructuring ourselves in a way which was going to be built the agent, like which was going to be the foundation of the agency for the future, right? In terms of how we kept expanding our verticals, getting in industry experts, expanding our own knowledge base. We didn't have media as a separate function, for example. Now we do. Until 2 years ago, we didn't even have a split in media. Like we used to have one media team. Now we have a media strategy team and servicing team, and we have a media delivery team. So we keep constantly evolving and growing. I think in the past more than 8 years that I've been here, I must have seen at least some 4 to 5 different types of team structures, org structures, right? Because you have to be on top of it. You can't be in a stagnant position all your life as an agency or as a structure. Because if what we're advertising on, which is digital, if that is evolving, you have to adapt to that. So truly FoxyMoron, because we've been stupid and made our mistakes, but we've also been quick and agile to like think on our feet, both from a creative and innovative point of view, and also how we're adapting and evolving as an agency point of view. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I really wonder that some like almost like the agencies who have scaled up really well, they were able to actually fetch time apart from the client work, and then and then the restructuring part also they did it very well. So
yeah, I would, but to be honest, aise kuch nahi tha. We never got time. This is all hustle. Like you're just going. It's on the go. Like you're constantly on the go. That's the real answer. But yeah, we've had, of course, we take our company very seriously. I think that's another thing. We don't take ourselves as seriously, but we take our organization very seriously. So we will always make time for the company and to do what's best for the company and for the people. And I think that's kind of what always drove us, right? Okay, how does this guy go from this level to this level? How does this guy elevate his conversation in the room? How does this guy go from, being on our side to being on the client side, hypothetically? So you're always geared for growth and that mindset. Also, like Xavier and Pratik have done a couple of podcasts as well. So if you guys want to know more about Foxy and the journey and things like that, I think it's called Taking Chances. And the entire story of Foxy and stuff is also on there. So you guys can check that out. Janvi, you can probably, if you're here, you can just drop that in the chat. So the name of the thing. But yeah, cool. Does that answer your question, Millie?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Hi. So I had 2-3 small questions. The first being similar to Johan's and other people. Like when you're switching the department, like when you spoke about if you want to explore copy and strategy, like while you're an account manager, you can also do a few things, right? But for example, I want to explore the media side, like the entire media section. So I can't do that when I'm a part of the client servicing team. But if I want to switch, like, do I need to have like a certain background, and do I need to learn by myself and then join the team, or like how does it work?
So honestly, it depends, Devanshi, on the kind of skill that you're looking for. Now, if you're talking about media in particular, right, you can join whichever department and you can do online courses. And I don't mean like do online courses in terms of educational courses, do courses from platforms. So Google has its certifications, Facebook has its certifications, Twitter has Twitter Flight School. All the platforms themselves have courses that you can take, which are completely free of cost, right? And they're proper certifications which you can put on your bio on LinkedIn that you are Google AdWords certified or you are Google whatever certified. There's Facebook has Facebook Blueprint. So at least the basic courses of these are all free of cost. specifically to media, they teach a lot of what the media juniors do, right? In terms of optimization, understanding how those metrics work. So you can always do those on the side and see if you like it, see if that interests you, see if that intrigues you, and then you can decide from there, right? When it comes to, similarly, if it comes to design, there are enough and more actual Photoshop, courses, etc., that exist, which you can take. You can always just download it and play around with it yourself and see if that's something you like. So yeah, it depends on different aspects and what you'd like to do. But there's always ways to learn yourself. Never stop being curious, no matter what you do, right? So always understand whether it's new technology or new function or new vertical. What is it that interests you? What is it that you can find, and how can it add value back to your life?
Right.
But yeah.
So when you're like wanting to switch to the client side, like I've heard a lot of people say that, or even for that fact, I've seen most of my clients are MBA graduates or something. And like if I don't want to take that route, is there something like I should have agency experience and then switch to client side, or like there's no set thing as such?
I would say never switch to the client side. That's my personal way. I think it's damn boring. How can you sell one product for your entire life? Like shampoo kitna bechoge life mein? But no, regardless, if on a serious note, there are a lot of companies who have very strict policies about having MBAs from certain institutions only who are eligible to join their esteemed institution. I'm not an MBA by any way, shape, mean, or form. Neither are Suvir, neither are Prateek. Most of my top management in the agency we're not MBAs. Most of the business, I don't think any of our business heads are MBAs. Not to devalue the power of education. I was a very good student, and I always think everything in my career has been because I had a very solid education. But the tag of MBA, I think that's again it's a very abused concept. But coming back to your question, so obviously, as you can see, this touches a nerve because it's very annoying because there's a sense of entitlement which comes in India with somebody being an MBA, which is honestly just crap. But yeah, so there are companies which have those kind of restrictions that we will only take certain B school kids into our esteemed organization. If that doesn't tell you something about the company itself, then whatever. There are on the flip side, there are a lot of good client side companies, etc., who are very open. As long as you have the right kind of experience and the right kind of skill set, it really matters on you as an individual and what your experience has been. Would I advise you to work in an agency before a brand? 100%, because it is something that builds your foundation, especially if you're interested in digital. Okay, to be very honest, if you're talking about mainline and all, you're not going to get into the depths of copy when you're on the brand side. But you will get into possibly the depths of a media plan or of a social campaign or of how platforms work and how those kinds of things work. So if you are interested in digital, and digital is the future anyways, I would definitely advise that you look at working in an agency before you move to the client side. And agencies also, like, clients genuinely pick up the people that they like. My first offer was from my first client, and like straight up, it was just like, come. And that happens a lot. Of course, there are non-poaching clauses and stuff like that, but they do look out for you. Like, I am still very, very good friends with my clients who I was servicing 7-8 years ago as well. And they have moved companies since then. I am still here, but I have kept working with them over and over again as clients, or like hung out with them, or whichever way. So the road to client side is through, yes, an MBA, yes, an agency, and yes, of course, experience, right? So you could get into like the sales vertical of it. You could get into like a research company and then sort of find your way into there. You could get into like the consultancy angle also. So if you go to like an Ernst & Young, or you go to like a Deloitte and you go to one of those guys, and then you could find your way into a brand as well. So there are many roads into a brand, but depends on what drives your passion, honestly.
All right, and I have my last question, which is purely based on servicing. So like, I don't know if everyone has gone through this, but when I got into the agency and I was new on the brand and the agency itself, there were times when in the beginning I would give into like everything the client says, and I would be like, okay, fine, like I'll do this, I'll do this. Then there was a time when it was putting a lot of pressure on my designers, my copywriters, everybody. So at one point I had to I wanted to put my foot down, but even though I tried to, my clients, some of them did listen, but some of them didn't. And the only time they would actually agree to what I'm trying to say is when I have to bring my manager on board, and then my manager will say the exact same thing. And we had this challenge once that, okay, I'll say the exact same thing, you say the exact same thing, and then let's see who the client listens to. And the client listened to the manager, the exact same words. So my point being that if my manager is not around, then is there any way I can manage it? What if my manager can't show up or talk to the client at that point?
I have a fun answer to this and I have a serious answer to this. I'll start with the fun answer because we've actually done this. Manager se baat karni hai. I have made my interns talk to my clients and say, please repeat, say this. I have written down what the intern has to say and say he wants to talk to somebody senior, please talk. Ye karte hain. This is all, it's all fun and games because this is what, it's honestly nothing but somebody's ego that you have to stroke, right? So it depends on, what the nature of it is, right? If it is a sincere and serious business discussion, right? Wherein, let me give you an example. There is a client which we handle called SanDisk, Western Digital, WD. You must have heard of these brands, right? They are into storage solutions. We were right in the about to start the pandemic, and they had one of their biggest annual campaigns of the year, which is called Backup Nahi to Pack Up or something like that, around World Backup Day. 31st March is World Backup Day, and they were building a campaign around that. They had massive media money sparked on that discussion, and it was a pandemic happening. We didn't know, lockdown was just about to start and had started. There was a lot of back and forth of whether we should do the campaign, not do the campaign. Amazon pe to available hai, but kya Amazon band ho raha hai, nahi ho raha hai. So when it is so many ambiguities, so many uncertainties, it is my responsibility as a business partner to my client to be on that call and to make sure that the best possible decision is made when it comes to a business outcome, right? So it depends, therefore, on the situation. If it is just about, operationally ye ho nahi raha hai, and this post has had to go out, didn't go out, or this artwork had to be delivered, didn't happen, or let's say this person is available, not available. Basically, you need to know how to distinguish between urgent, important, and ego massaging, right? And take those decisions that way. And you should have very clear and candid conversations with your managers about how you're going to mitigate that with the client. Because just by you saying that, oh, okay, such and such, and your client says, okay, I want to talk to your boss, and they say, okay, I will also talk to the client and say the same thing, and okay, client resolved. That's okay, client maan gaya. But what is in it for you and the manager then to discuss? So for example, something I used to do is, when I became from level A to level B and I had to upgrade, which means my team had to upgrade, which means my clients had to be off my back a little bit, because I went from dealing with 3 clients to 12 clients. So, right, I needed them to take my team more seriously. So it's a gradual process. I started taking on, so every time my client would call me, I would call my senior executive and be like, just give me a second. Hello, client. Give me a second. I'm getting Karishma on the phone as well. I would be on those calls with Karishma, and then there's a weaning period. So then I started giving her those responsibilities. Then I started briefing her for those calls and saying, you lead the call. I'm a passive listener. So my team members also comfortable because she knows she's got my support. And the client is also comfortable that, okay, they're on the same page. And then slowly, gradually, she became more touchy-pally, more in touch with Karishma. Because then I make it clear that, listen, she's the point of contact. I am not the point of contact anymore. And that's how it needs to happen. So in your example, it is your manager's responsibility also to ensure that the client is taking you seriously. And so those are always expectation setting calls, which needs to happen, which is based on rapport, it's based on skill set, it's based on conversations, which are very important to have. These things don't happen magically, you have to explain and work through these things with your clients and with your teams.
Right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Guys, we need to hurry up a little bit so that, we almost out of time. So Dhruv and
Yes.
if you could just.
Mine is the last. It's not more of an overall agency thing, wala question. It's more of something related to my own resume. So, what I basically need is a bird's eye view of what I have been doing through my work experience up until now. So, when I graduated from college, I immediately started working in an agency based out of Oakland. We had brands like the Radico Group and JBL and Magic Moments and whatnot. A year there, then I transitioned into another agency based in Gurgaon called Blue Beans, where we had all F&B brands, and I worked on a few of those. Some of them were UAE based. Again, a year after that, I switched to the client side, for the entirety of my probation. Then I started working at then I started studying at XIC. So, all until now, whenever I went through that process, so I got to hear a lot कि एक साल तो निकालना ही पड़ता है, 2 साल तो निकालना ही पड़ता है in one agency or the other. And while it held, it was, let's say, made sense to a degree, I really felt anxious when I was switching, because there was various different reasons that motivated me to switch to the agencies. But when I was in the final, when I was at the client side for that brief period of time, that's when I realized that all of what I had done in the past 2.5 years so was falling short of what I wanted to do, which is why I'm here at XIC now. So as you who have worked for around a decade or more than a decade, as you who can also look at it from a recruiter's angle rather than just a fellow professional working in the sense, do you think that I'm on the right path? Because I worked as a copywriter when I did, and as of now, I am also interning currently as a copywriter itself. But I want to build my path as a creative director going forward, 5 to 6 years down the line. I see myself as a creative director. So, do you think that I'm on the right path now? I just want a bird's eye view of the same. That's all.
I mean, if you continue to harness your skill and continue to work in the creative field, yes. I mean, that's how you become a CD, right? That you would work on upgrading your portfolio, building your portfolio, and having those kind of conversations. But what I would definitely say is that beyond a certain point, working in small agencies doesn't cut it, right? And I've hired way too many people who are very gifted, no doubt, but they've always been restricted by the scale of the brands that they worked on. Like, for example, one of my best account managers, I would flip my camera and show him to you, but he'll get a little startled, but he's right there. So he came from a smaller agency, much smaller agency. He had worked with them for almost 2 years and lots of raw potential, but he didn't have the right exposure because the brands that he worked on didn't do media, they didn't do anything. They were just doing basic social stuff. So even though he was good at what he was doing, but he never had the right platform to express or the right kind of clients to work with, or, explore different avenues and work digital into. So he joined us as probably like a senior executive. And by being here, because he had that raw talent and that raw skill and the ability to have those conversations, and he got the right kind of exposure, he's been promoted year after year. So he went from senior executive to ATL to TL. So he literally got promoted every single year because he was good at what he did, but he got the skill set, he got the exposure from the brand side. If you don't have a brand that's going to spend money, if you don't have a reputed brand, reputed is debatable, but if you don't have a brand which has scale and volume to do campaigns, if you're on autopilot brands, then that's always going to curb the nature of what your output is going to be. So it may be good for probably initially to get into the industry, but you have to work towards upgrading your, your repertoire of clients, because that's what you're collecting and that's what experience and exposure does to you. But I do not ever condone the thought of keeping on switching every couple of years, right? Because unless your agency is not giving you anything in terms of you're not happy, but not happy in the Gen Z format of being happy, not happy in terms of you don't have the right set of clients, you have a boss which is making your life hell, and the company is not doing anything about it after you voiced yourself that this person is making my life hell, or whichever, conversations can be multifold. But if without very serious concrete reasons, I think that if the company's vision is right, as I started off this presentation by saying, if you know you're in the right place, then there's always ways to get into the right spot. So find the right place that matches your values and where you want to be in your career, and then, you know, have conversations. One of the things that people make a mistake of doing is they don't talk to people enough. Hey, you're my boss, tell me what's my career path, or hey, this is where I want to go, tell me how to get there. Right? So it's all about planning. You are responsible again for yourself. Self accountability. Nobody is going to sit, the HR who runs 300 employees is not going to sit and individually map career paths, right? So if you take yourself seriously and you respect your own time and you respect your own career, you are responsible for that yourself. And then if you don't get the right answers or the right opportunities, then you bounce. But if you know what you want to do, but you want your company or your boss's help to figure out how to do it, have those conversations. It may not be your boss. Sometimes bosses are mean. Sometimes bosses are dumb. Speak to somebody else who's senior, right? Who you would have access to, or you would have a conversation with. Understand from them how you can take your journey forward, and then move forward within the agency, or then take your path elsewhere. But yes, agency is the right way to go if you want to be a creative director, for sure. And work on getting into a bigger, better agency with the right kind of clients.
Yes, now
So
I
either
did
look at
apply at FoxyMoron like when I was just 6 months into the agency, and I was turned down. But I realized 6 months was too soon. But now I wanna, and now I'm studying, and now it's the time management stuff. So do you guys have any part-time opportunities that I could sign up for?
Yeah, always. Careers@zoomedia.in. I will put that in the comments also, I guess.
I'll do. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. I think we have the last question. Mahima.
Yeah, I'll keep it very short. I have two small questions. Number one, while you were talking, you mentioned about making case studies for entering into awards. So that intrigued me into asking that, what goes behind, what is the BTS behind entering into award, like line stands or, anything like that. What goes behind entering into an award? And number two is that, I'll ask you right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, number two is that since you did your PGD from Westminster, University of Westminster, did it give you an extra edge when you came back to India?
Okay, great. I will start with the awards one. I think honestly, though, Janvi is better at this than I am, because I personally, one of my, I would say, because I mean, nobody's invincible, right? My problem area in life, I think, has been awards. I'm not very good at talking about the work that we do, that I do. And that's why, my Copcom lovely team is always constantly pushing us to do awards and win awards. Foxy is extremely awarded, don't get me wrong. We do a lot of case studies generally. What goes behind it? There are two approaches, and I'm aware of everybody's time, but I will explain these two things. One is, and both have their own pros and cons and beliefs and non-believers in both. One is you look at the awards that exist. So if you want to go go to Cannes and you want to get something in that, you look at the category, look at what has won before, look at the kind of conversations, look at the kind of innovations, look at basically what's capturing people's attention. What is the caliber within that particular category? So if I'm working, it also depends on the brand that you're working for, right? So if I'm working for, let's say, a fashion and apparel brand, then I will look for case studies, whether it's global or Indian, of people who have won in that category for doing something like that. So what's considered innovation in beauty is very different from what's considered innovation in auto, for instance, right? Different categories. So depending on your category, study other award entries and what the ones past winners and how they've won, etc. Then look at the criteria that you want that you're judged on. And then you can almost retro create a campaign around that. And there are lots of brands which are open to those conversations. And there are lots of agencies which do that as well, where you retrofit. So for example, I want to create a CSR driven campaign. A lot of times clients give that brief to agency, we want to enter award season next year with a CSR driven campaign. So come up with something for one of our products or one of our product lines or whatever. Sometimes agencies go to the client saying, hi, this is your award winning idea for the year. And this is what we want to invest behind. That's one school of thought which exists. The second one very quickly is, of course, whenever you have like an integrated campaign, right? Wherein you're doing 360 on digital, you're doing the media, you're doing the creative, you're doing the social, you're doing the videos, you're doing the influencers, you're doing everything else that is, and which has delivered business results. that is something that you would formulate a case study around. So you would have your numbers, you'd have your KPIs. Every campaign works on KPIs. What was it that you expected to deliver? What is it that you did deliver? So on and so forth. So you would measure how well you did and what the business problem was and what is the business problem that you solved using digital. And then you would stitch that together into a story. Not, you may have done 10 things, but not all 10 things have to be impactful. So making case studies is picking the right 3 things which stitch together in a story and land you at the end result, which was a business result, right? And then the operationalizing of it is, of course, you work with the client, get approvals, all that jazz. You'll work with the slates, design, graphic, video, etc., and make it into a thing. Generally, every case study, there's a video and a write-up. Both need to be worked on, and then they need to be submitted to the awards. Did that answer your first part of the question? Yeah, perfect. University of Westminster, I did my master's in marketing communication. I had the option of doing marketing communication and marketing management. So to whoever had asked me before, advertising and marketing. So the marketing management course had like new product development and had like sales modules and things like that. And the MarcCom, which is my course, had more to do with PR, biobehavior, those kind of things, basically consumer insighting, market research, so on and so forth. Was it useful in India? No, not at all. It didn't make a difference. Was it fun from an exposure point of view? 100%. I would also say, I would actually go as far as saying that because I did HRBMS, and HRBMS is, I don't know what it is today, but at least 10 years ago, it was literally the best course that you could do. One of the most esteemed courses in India at the time. We had too much information, too many live projects, too much industry faculty, as you all are also, clearly tuned to getting. So our exposure, what I studied from a theory and practical point of view already in my undergrad, the difference for me in my postgrad was just honestly the UK-based case studies and the UK-based examples and like a global lens of exposure from a marketing point of view. But the theory, honestly, this is a fact. Indians are smarter. We do study harder. We do much more intense work academically than a lot of the courses abroad. So from at least from my background of education, the theory and stuff wasn't really that much of a difference. I had studied most of it before. Thoda uska structuring alag tha, the way that they answer papers and all is a little different. So it's an evolved way of thinking. Like what was interesting was doing the dissertation. What was interesting was doing the research. What was interesting was doing like the class modules and the class exercises that they had. The actual course material wasn't the challenge or, the interesting part of it. So as I said, the exposure was great. Did it help me coming back to India? No. Would it help anybody to do a master's? I would say unless it's a specialized course, I wouldn't say so. Like you should do, whether you do like an entrepreneurship course or whether you do something like that. Yes. I would also advise if you're really going to invest your money into going abroad, do it at a point where, like I went very early. I went when I was straight out of college. Had I spent my own money, because I got a scholarship, so I didn't have to, but had I spent my own money, I would have definitely gone 4-5 years in to do like an executive level MBA or something like that, because that is when you meet the future brand managers, right? And that is when you actually build a network. So executive MBAs are not as much about the course alone, but it's also about the people you meet. A lot of people come out and get into like great companies. They also start lots of ventures together and startups together. So it's as much about the network as it is about the coursework. But if you're doing an MBA of any sort, which is for purely learning and not for a better job or anything like that, do a good university, a good MBA, which is not a 1-year course. It should be like a 2-year hardcore course, which really gets into it if you're doing it from a learning point of view. If it's just a check mark, then save money, do a 1-year course and get it done.
Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prachi. Like, you really took the effort. The preparation was one thing, but the kind of time we have spent answering questions, which was what we were like really looking forward to, and which I'm sure some of them would have some real clear ideas as to, as far as the industry goes. Of course, they will keep exploring, keep learning. But, there are so many questions, Anna. That we would love to have this again so that, some more the unanswered questions which remains today. And
I'd be happy to. I mean, I'm always happy to do this whenever you guys want.